I never brought her name up at all. She tells me to shut up. I never brought your name up at all, but you took it personal. They told us when we walked in as adults, do not take it personal. Nobody said nobody's name. You need to shut up. Go to the SPCA and get you a cat. That's why these black men are single. Right, these black women are single right there. And then you wonder why we don't want them. And then they say, it's strong black woman. That's a strong black woman? Telling a strange black man to shut up? That's why she will die alone.
Well. Listen, I'm not here to argue with anybody. But that video hit home for me. And I mean, I don't know the context of it, but I will say, as it relates to him saying that, telling a strange man to shut up. And I think about myself before I met my husband. And I think, and I've shared, when I asked my daughter about 5 years ago on my YouTube channel what she saw of me when I was dating, what was I showing her? And she said that she saw that I was just how dominant I was in relationships. And I didn't realize that's what I was doing, because I thought it was showing strength, to be decisive and, take charge of things. Because again, as a single mother, an officer in the military, being raised, I was the oldest. All I knew was to do things and get things done. But when you're doing that, there's a certain bravado that comes along with that you're not aware of. And part of it too is our mouths. Now, for me, before I met my husband and I had a series of poor relationships by my own choices, I saw myself becoming meaner, bitter. And what made me think about that is I saw women in my life, some in my family, that were that way. And I didn't want that. I didn't want that for me. So I had to start, learning to not necessarily shrink myself, but everything in temperance. But I went from one end of the spectrum of being too overbearing to not standing up for myself, and thus ending up in a relationship that was harmful to me. But I had to find a way to meet in the middle. And I wanted to be softer. You know what I mean? And what I mean softer is not necessarily cowering, but to be kind, to be sweet, to be that, again, I don't know, I can't think of the word, but to be softer, even in my speech, even in my communication, because in my workforce, you have to be very deliberate, very authoritative. But I wanted to be softer. And I never found myself or never allowed myself to be that. And so what I found is our way of control and a defense mechanism is to use our mouth to back people up off of us. Yeah, it's to use our mouths to back people up off. And then we take that from the workforce into the relationships. Thus, my daughter's seeing me as dominant. And mind you, I'm raising her when we're talking about when she was in her formative years, through teenage years. I didn't know that's what I was sending her. But my mouth, I could get with the best of them. And it's interesting because, I often mention that I went to school with Kevin Samuels. Now, didn't really know him that well in high school because he was a couple of years younger than me, but we engaged, our groups engaged because we were all in Greek letter organizations. And, as a black community on OU's campus, we all, we congregated. So many people had told me over the years, and even, Kevin probably talked about the women that were very, in your face. And I was one of them. I was one of them. And I carried that through my relationships. That may or may not have been one of the reasons that me and my daughter's father didn't work out. I'm not saying that we would have anyway, but I was not backing down. I thought that everything was worth fighting for. And it's not. I used to hear women say, pick your battles. Well, for me, everything was, worth fighting against. But there's no peace in that. There's no peace in having to constantly struggle with the person that you're supposed to care for and they're supposed to care for you. I think about the person I was before I met my husband. And that's why I said if I would have met him sooner, I probably would have messed it up. Because even when we first started dating, our first time out on the road together, and we came into a situation dealing with the rental car, and it wasn't happening the way it should have been happening, I immediately get into, regulating mode. And then he says, I got it. So he hadn't seen that side of me, but again, that's what I was used to doing, taking charge of stuff. And he said, I got it. Now, fortunately for me this time, because of the things I'd gone through, I knew enough to back off. And he and I were just still getting to know each other. But imagine if I kept on doing that. That's not attractive. That's not attractive. And let me tell you something. No one is saying a man that's worth his salt. Because there's a difference between a man and a male. A man does not want a woman that is not capable of making decisions, getting things done, because when he's out and about doing what he thinks to do, he wants to have confidence that she can do what she needs to do. So no one is saying that. My husband will tell you he's very proud of me. And he knows, he says when he's on the road, he's, quite confident I can handle things around here. But again, if I said I wanted this, why would I make it difficult for myself? And it's not about being male-centered. But if you want to be in a relationship with a man, a heterosexual man, you have to realize sometimes, shut up. Is it really that important? I can honestly say, one of the best compliments my husband gives me is when he says that he doesn't want to go to work. And not because he doesn't want to go to work, but he doesn't want to leave me and the comfort that he feels in the home with me. We have discussions. I don't yell at him, but again, my mouth, I know this. But why? And for me, I didn't want to be alone. Now listen, I understood that there was a possibility I was going to be alone, and quite frankly, a probability because of my age. But that's not what I wanted. Would I have dealt with it and thrived anyway? I absolutely would have. But I had to, start thinking about, okay, them, but what is it about me? You understand me? Everything, and I use an example even with the person that put his hands on me. I couldn't let anything go. Even when I would come home one time and he had, put the dishes away, and instead of me being appreciative of that and saying thank you, I made it a point to point out that he put the stuff in wrong places. Who wants to do anything for you if you can't? So I learned from that. Sometimes does my husband put stuff in the wrong place? Yep. What do? Nothing. Thank you, babe. If it's that important for me to put it in the right place, I do it myself. But I had to find, that, and that's part, particularly if you're living by yourself for a long period of time, doing things your own way, or if you're a single parent, no way but your own, because you don't have to consider nobody else. Even if you're a single parent, they consider your ways, you have to consider theirs. So I see, I feel what he's saying. Nobody wants to deal with that. And I'm glad I got the revelation. And it's not a sign of weakness to shut your mouth. Sometimes. It's not a sign of weakness to choose your words carefully when you're dealing in your relationship, your marriage. that actually shows strength and wisdom. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Take that with you.